we have a good turnout here. Hope you had a great lunch. We're ready to get started here. Beautiful models by Wolfgang.
My life? Good deal. Hello. Thank you all for coming. I hope you're enjoying GrrCON. I hope you're all ready to talk about AutoCAD, right? Over here. No, of course, our objectives today are very simple. We're going to talk a little bit about threat modeling, threat management, and how it fits in a security program. With that as a backdrop, we're going to point out some pain points in the security program, and we'll explore securing a system. This looks very bad up front. We'll explore securing a system using threat modeling as opposed to traditional defense and data. Then I want to wrap up talking about how modeling can drive assessments and can drive pen tests. A bit about me, I'm Wolfgang Goerlich. I'm the VP of Consulting at 5 Point, where we do assessments and manage programs and whatnot. I tweet at jwgoerlich, and I blog at www.jwgoerlich.com. Of course, everything I'm talking about today, my own views, you guys have heard this thing a zillion times. As you might have picked up, I'm regularly trolled. I am the bulk of the redundancy meme, thanks to this guy over here, who you'll find out in a cage by the lock sport. No joke. I like redundancy. I like, you want to win, right? You want to have multiple chances to win. And when something breaks, you want to have a backup plan. And you want to be highly available. These are important things. I also have cats, 6 of them, which is more a testament to my daughter's social engineering and less a testament to anything about cats. I keep her well away from Chris Silvers. That's our gentleman's agreement, because that would end up as well. I've got a great kid on the way. I'm very happy about that. His name is Logan. He'll be born in November. I'm already calling him Wolverine, much to the chagrin of his parents. You gotta go with it. And yeah, I do get trolled regularly. It's probably on Twitter as we speak. And sometimes I'm the answer to Hacker Feud, speaking of trolls. And there is one other I want to mention. There's this more coffee thing going around. Does anyone want to confess now to who's doing that?
It's you.
Yeah, it's me, right? Well played. They got a domain, a Twitter account, Facebook account, and they're sticking stickers everywhere. Well played. But in all seriousness, if you aren't in the room, or if you guys aren't behind to see the stickers, it'd be good helping move them, because I guess the venue is going to charge them like someone got a amount of money for every sticker on the wall or some stupid things. Very funny, but let's not get the venue in place or in trouble. So a look back at where we are. I've been speaking about a security program I'm building for about 5 years now, and it was once described to me as the conference equivalent of reality television, right? What's Wolfgang going to mess up now? What's he going to tell us so that we don't mess it up? It's been a lot of fun. I started at a financial services firm where I was a security manager. Today I'm doing CSO services for them. And really wanted to build a different type of security program, one that was actionable, one that meant something to the organization, one where when I was talking to the organization, I was talking about the money, right? I was talking about the trades. I was talking about the systems that really matter. Where I wasn't having to talk about firewalls and debate IPS signatures. And from there, we derived, and you may have caught my talk at GrrCON, the first year at GrrCON. I started focusing on the impact. So, okay, we're focusing in on money, that's great, but what are all these systems we have? What does it mean to the organization? And what happens when someone throws something at Wolfgang? I'm going to go do this at the stage. No, what happens when those systems go away, right? What's the pain the organization feels, and can we monetize that? So I gave a series of talks on asteroids driving security, which is great, because if you get hit by an asteroid, you no longer have to worry about security. That's the takeaway. And then I was talking a bit about risk management, right? So if we know what things matter, we can focus in on the systems that really matter. And I gave the analogy of a hill. We're on a hill. Everyone in defense has your own hill. Someone's always trying to capture your hill. Our job is to make sure they don't get us. On that hill is a number of systems that we protect from, vis-a-vis boulders. Every day we wake up, we roll those boulders up the hill as high as possible to make sure they're secure. And then some time goes by, a conference like GrrCON happens, Chris Roberts comes up and explains how you can plug something in and make everything go like this. And our boulders roll back down, right? And now we're like, oh no, we gotta roll them back up. And there's so many boulders that a lot of times you hear just about every conference about infosec burnout. Because you can drive yourself nuts doing this. So I talk a lot about risk management, which is, in my mind, taking the organization's mission, the assets that protect it, and focusing your security efforts on those assets. Now, once we get some time to get ahead of things, we realize, it's not just the boulders we have, it's also the boulders that everyone's throwing at us. The new systems that are coming online. And if we can get ahead of it, we can begin doing lifecycle management and SDLC activities. And what that allows us to do is ensure that when the boulders land, they're as high up on the hill as possible. So that all makes sense, right? That's a security program, right? That's the way you build a security program. And once we got to that point, I was like, awesome, this is fantastic. I got this hill, I got these boulders. Let's pen test. This is going to be great, right? This is the perfect time. I got a mature program, let's pen test. And I naively thought that this is what I would get from a pen test. I'd have someone who was going to attack me like a real-world attacker would. I'd have someone who would be using the same techniques and skills as a real-world attacker would. I'd have someone who was paying attention since I had all this information about what was important and what wasn't to my business context. In other words, I thought, hey, someone's going to come in and bang on the boulders the right way. That's what a pen test was. Because after all, risk management, divorce of threat is not necessarily risk management, right? We've all seen this slide a gazillion times. Risk management is composed of assets, threats, and vulnerabilities. So I got the pen tested, I'm all excited, I'm really just raring to go. And I was just a little bit naive, I think, because instead of having someone who was this brilliant attacker who's going to assess my environment like a really good attacker would, I got this guy who comes up my hill, picks up the boulder he can reach, throws it down to the bottom, beats his chest, and runs an SSC. And then charges me for quite a bit. Just quick survey of the room. Who here has been involved with a security breach in their organization? Okay. Still surprisingly low amount. All right. Two things. One, the camera's on me. And two, let me rephrase that. Who here has insight into a hypothetical security breach that may or may not have happened in their organization? Yeah, I see the room doubles. I like that. So, all right, raise your hand if that hypothetical breach involved someone getting in through social engineering, right? Phishing attacks, calling in, spear phishing, all right? How about the perimeter, right? Perimeter web apps, that stuff there. Okay. Who here has insight into a hypothetical breach that involves someone doing an art cache poisoning in your core switch? Oh, no, I don't believe that. Two guys, okay. Significantly smaller percentage. Very, very rare. First time I've actually had someone raise their hand to that. And that's exactly what this guy did. He came and did an ARP scan poison on our perimeter, or on our core switch, and called it a pen test. I'm like, God, come on, really? Really? That's what you're charging for? They just give you any sort of good threat intel. So I, for a while, was talking about what I was calling boulder-based security, which is, fine, I don't have good threat intel. Just talk to me about the assets and vulnerabilities. I can manage this. I can see them. They're on my hill. I can walk into this, and I can do something about it. And boulder-based security was about continuous improvement, right? How can we integrate security controls over time, keep getting better, look at the life cycle? How can we do vulnerability management so we have very good intel onto our position on the hill? And this worked great. This worked fantastic. And I was stuck there for a very long time because it did work great, right? And I really couldn't encapsulate what the problem was. Why was I not happy with this guy with this pen test for me? And as some people in this room probably know, I did a podcast series for my site. I was interviewing B-side speakers, and I spoke to Raphael Mudge. He's out front if you grab him, it's time well spent. And this is what Raphael Mudge said to me. My idea of hacking is taking the tactics, techniques, and procedures that different threats are using today. There's more to this quote. I'll revisit it later on the slide deck. But I want to just pause there, because a light bulb went off in that moment. I was in my car, I was parked down at the boardwalk, had my Skype headset on. I was like, wait a minute, say that again. Because that's it, right? That's the problem with pen tests. They're not looking at the true tactics and techniques that attackers are using. So Why not? Well, for one, it's kind of hard sometimes to get that information. So some good sources of tactics and techniques, especially as your security program matures, would be your IDS or VM, your incident response reports, right? How are the bad guys really owning our individual business? Which is going to be different from business to business. Now, once we get some of that intel, we may think, well, wait, bad guys generally are just like other businesses, right? They've got market focus. So how is the bad guys compromising businesses like ours? So we can get that from things like Isaac. In the financial ethics, Isaac is fantastic. They'll tell you, hey, under idea, I got breached. And here's how it happened. Here's the packet took to our network. And oh, by the way, here's a snort signature that you can catch that. He's a much better throw, and you got to work on this. Ninja style. All right, and the third one, of course, is it's happening all over, right? I mean, people are getting breached left and right, so there's lots of good vendor-specific threat reports, such as Ponemon and Verizon and whatnot. So from that, we can begin to talk about modeling abuse, how people are actually getting at us, and begin to have some serious discussion as to how we can build controls around that. And that gets us into threat modeling. And at a high level, that's our problem case, right? Risk management is fantastic. If you've got good asset management, you're winning. If you've got good vulnerability management, you're winning. But what about threat management? You can't do it blindly. So how can we begin to talk about threats? One caveat I want to put up front is that I'm going to share a very generic threat modeling approach, threat management approach today. There are several great ones out there. Buzzword of the day, pick it, go check it out. I'm not suggesting that this is the way to do it. I'm saying this is a way to do it, and then build it out for what's right for your environment. I mentioned this generic approach on Twitter, and I got some good feedback. Specifically, that I should introduce it as Cyber Kill Chains of Death, brought to you by Lockheed Martin. Yeah. Hello, Paul. Is Paul in the room? Oh, Paul. I thought that was great. I laughed and I thought. So I asked him if I could put that up. But no, I'm not talking about kill chains or any of that. Do what's right in your environment, do what works, but obviously do something. We need to have better threat intel if we're regularly secure environments. And the way you do that is you look at impacts, you look at controls, and you look at attack paths. Impacts are pretty simple. What is the real objective that attack is going to do to you, right? If you're in a financial space, maybe it's something like try to do fraudulent trades. If you're in an educational space, it's going to be something different. If you're in a healthcare space, it's going to be something different, patient care information. If you're obviously handling credit card transactions, it's a very clear defined objective. If you're doing mergers and acquisitions, maybe that's reading your CEO's email. What are they actually going after? And if that occurs, what does it mean to us? Right? What does it mean to us as an organization? Maybe some of these attacks don't mean anything. We've all come to the conclusion that most of us, oh, we're already breached. We know that. Okay, well, if you're already breached and you're still in business and everything's fine, clearly you're doing a great job containing that breach. Maybe it doesn't matter in that case. And there we can begin to talk about controls. Detective, of course, preventative, catch the attackers, stop the attackers. The corrective controls. I'm already breached. Great. How's your business doing? Well, we just made $500 million in profit. Fantastic. Great corrective controls. We somehow distracted the attackers from damaging you. Also, it's things like honeypots, tar pits, things that can slow down an attacker or dissuade them from attacking, things that increase the cost of the attack to the attacker. Then we can begin to look at the attack path, right? How they're actually going to execute an attack to achieve a set objective that would damage your organization. So you have all these different threats, a small subset of which matter to you. A small subset of those, you do a deep dive. You're obviously going to, in most cases, come in externally. Do an initial breach, escalate privileges. Gain persistence on the host. Do some more recon, do some more escalations and breaches. Gain persistence on the network. And then at some point, they're going to achieve that objective that's really going to be painful. So we can look at that whole path as it transitions through the network. You can map it out as a tree, right? Here's the steps the attacker can take, here's the tactics. So we can look at those and measure those. And we can map it out as a path. And that's what I'm most interested in. If I've got my hill, I've got my boulders on my hill, what path are the attackers in the real world going to take up that hill to get to the boulders that matter most to me? I can determine that, again, taking information like lessons learned from SIM and IPS and IDS, Isaac and all that information. I can have some really good conversations around the coverage that we have, right? Taking the controls and the path detector is going to take. Maybe we have some fantastic coverage. Maybe we've looked at all those different steps and we can prevent it. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't even know. But if we do know, we're in a much better spot, right? We can do things like we can focus our efforts, which we'll talk about in just a second. We can do things like contextualize vulnerabilities. So we see an ODA being reported, we're not, sky is falling. We know what it really means. And we can do things like achieve what I like to think of as a no-impact breach, right? Your breach happens in the woods, and no one hears it. All right, you guys are ready. First off, focus. If you think of a risk management, it's focusing your effort across all the loaders you have, on the loaders that already matter, the systems that are already driving better. Right? You can think of vulnerable or threat management as doing the opposite. Focusing in on the controls on those loaders that really matter for the attack. It's use versus abuse. The next one is ODA. I don't know if you guys caught Mark Stanislav's talk yesterday, but he hit on this. It's a great talk on Linux. Because this talk is about ODA isn't everything, right? It's maybe one step in that, maybe three, depending on how they get in. But if you've got sufficient controls along the path, well, you can stop the attack and you can exhaust your space. And quick side note on that. So I just joined BioPoint relatively recently. I'm going through this transition, right? I'm going through this transition of what it means to be a financial InfoSec guy versus a consultant. And my first maybe week there, I got Zombie Tango, who's one of our pen testers. He's got the headphones on, you know, you guys, I'm sure you've seen, he's got all week he's doing that. I'm like, I'm going to talk to that guy, he's clearly busy. Go let this sit. He goes Friday all of a sudden he goes, I win! We're like, okay. And everyone gets off and they're leaving. I'm like, why is everyone leaving? They're like, frozen yogurt. I'm like, what? Frozen yogurt, yeah. Zombie Tango, when he wins, we all get frozen yogurt. I'm like, this is awesome. I love this job. In the financial space, we would never go, I win. And for another thing, we would never, ever say broken. I had to ask what that meant. I'm sorry to admit it. Well, so we won. We all went up to frozen yogurt. Great. So another couple weeks go by, and again he's and I know what this means. I'm ready. Like Pavlov's dog. I'm trained. And he goes, I win! And I'm like, awesome. I get up. He goes, oh wait a minute. And he didn't win. You know what happened was he discovered it was a cold fusion site. It was for our EDU. We got into it. We won. We found an OD on it. And dang if that admin didn't listen to Mark. And we couldn't get in. We couldn't establish persistence. We couldn't escalate anything. We couldn't do sudo. We couldn't change. So the lesson learned in this is, Mark, I think you owe me frozen yogurt. We'll catch up afterwards. Yeah, if you got the right controls, you can contextualize it and call the breach. And that's pretty important, right? Because what we're all here is to prevent an impact to organization. I think we've all moved beyond how we got to prevent the breach, because we're not preventing breaches. Two, we've got to prevent the impact of the breach. The no impact breach is, to me, the best type of breach. It's the breach you prevented early. It's the breach you detected, your incident response team did what they're supposed to do. It's the breach that you directed them to lower value assets, your honeypots, whatever. It's a breach that materially had no impact in the organization's overall mission, and therefore is not even seen on the executive radar, as it should be. So the key points of threat modeling using the attack path and going down that exercise would be these three, right? Focusing our security efforts on the controls that matter most and the systems that matter most. Contextualizing the vulnerabilities, and enabling that concept of no impact breach. So with that, let's do some play. I didn't mean play like that. Now you guys are on the radar now. So we're going to whiteboard a hypothetical situation. This is based on a real life event, but it's mostly hypothetical. We had the need to get that client to talk to that server. Are you guys going to throw them stuff at me? Give me some security controls. How would we secure this?
SSL.
SSL, okay, fine. We don't want anyone to view the web traffic. What else? I should add that we're transferring files back and forth over this.
SSH.
SSH, okay. What are we doing for file transfer?
SFTP.
Fine. How about authentication? Can we make this secure?
We could separate the.
Dual security. I heard dual security, two-factor authentication. Yes.
Here, everyone. Free beer.
Thank you. It took a long time to get to duo, man. So, in the end of the day, here's what they came up with. They came up with a system that looked like this. A website for managing the metadata and submitting the files. SFTP for sending them. Now we have file level encryption, right? So, we're pretty good across the firewalls. Obviously, that means the files are not encrypted, so they're going to use GPG to encrypt the files so that no one can read them. Oh, we're safe. We might as well do disencryption because just about every standard requires that. So do disencryption on the server. And the firewall, we're going to throw a WAF up. Right. This is pretty good defense in depth. Would you guys agree? I mean, we've achieved defense in depth here. Right? Multiple layers, multiple choke points. Good deal. Should add, they did have the guy come and throw the boulder down the hill. They did do a pen test. Actually couldn't manage anything, so yeah, we're secure. We've done the right things. We're good to go. Until in a vulnerability management meeting with the Linux team, questions asked, hey, did you guys patch the vulnerability yet? And he says, you know about that, I'm trying to patch it. And we're having this trouble because the Russian language files won't let us upgrade it. Play that back again, what? The Russian language files. Needless to say, they did an incident response, they did some analysis, and ladies and gentlemen, it was game over. Insert points to continue your business. So let's step back. I want to walk the attack path with us all and look at what happened in this scenario, and then we'll architect a more secure system. In terms of external recon, when they actually did look at the logs, hey, wait a minute, that IP address from Russia was scanning us for like 6 months before they attacked us. Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, and then we see that they were trying to get admin pages from the web logs. You didn't notice or think that was odd? No, the web team went, oh, it's just 404s, and the firewall team went, oh, we're blocking them, go us. And then they found, lo and behold, that on the SSH, there were several failed login attempts. No one thought that was, well, that guy was on vacation, and okay, good. So clearly you guys can start to see some controls we could put around this, right? Better following up on logs, maybe automatic blocking through IP tables, things that we can do with this layer. Now they had a control failure. Here's what happened. Web application firewalls, as you guys know, look for attack patterns, and if they're successful, they block those attack patterns. And all controls have this concept of time of check, time of use, right? It can be absolutely secure when you check it, but is it secure when the attackers used it? I don't know. And in this case, it wasn't because it was disabled by an upgrade. So there was no WAF. Oops. And if you guys want to Google, I'm sure you could find some major vendors who aren't WAF people who have suffered the same fate. It's a common problem. Now, with that control out of the way, the attackers were very happy having done web page enumeration and port enumeration to check out the website. And here's what they found. They found, look, I've got a directory traversal bug. Very interesting. I got SQL injection. Awesome. I got persistence. Fantastic. Somewhere in Russia, someone's eating my frozen yogurt. Not that I'm bitter. So, they were able to do an initial breach by executing those two, installing a remote shell. Boom, they're on the box, right? And I'm sure we can think, if you watch Mark's talk, there's a gazillion controls you can put in place on this level. Obviously, you can do code control, SDLC, directory traversal, a number of different things can be fixed here. And then they had escalated the privileges. How about that? Well, when we installed it, eventually So there really wasn't any controls to stop them here. Mindful. They installed a backdoor, which is our first indicator of compromise as Russian language files. I really want to thank them for doing that. And then they set up a phone home so they could connect back to the box. And we're on there for an indeterminate amount of time. Not too good. There was some additional signs that they were doing some internal recon on the perimeter network, Screen 7, DMZ, whatever term you want to use. There was some scans on the internal firewall. Now, I can understand not responding to port scans on your external firewall, sure. I mean, I have never seen an external firewall that's plugged in that doesn't get port scanned every minute. But on your internal firewall? From the server? Yeah, about that, the firewall guys say. We thought those Linux guys were doing something weird again. Right on. So we got some controls we could add there. And then they had to achieve their objectives. Now, depending on the audience, at this point in time, you're thinking one of two things. Either you're thinking, oh wait, Wolf, we got full disk encryption. No, this is the wrong audience for that. Because obviously that doesn't mean anything in this scenario. The server's booted. Full disk encryption doesn't protect you at all. But I think full disk encryption does point to the glaring weakness of defense and depth. And that glaring weakness is something very simple. How do I explain to someone at my management level and above, yeah, you know that control you put in? That doesn't matter anything to the attacker's path. But you said we had defense and depth. I know. But you said we had a WAF. I know. But we had our controls. I know. Yeah, it's a hard conversation to have. But with this audience, I'm sure that some of you thought, wait a minute, Wolf, you guys told me GPG encryption up front. I'm safe. Those files, yeah, okay, maybe this is a no-impact breach story, right? They've got in, we've stopped them at the last level, which would be a great story to have. But yeah, about that. For simplicity's sake, the Linux admin stores the public and private keys on the server. Thank you. Game over, ladies and gentlemen. So a lot of defense and depth, a lot of good intentions, a lot of people doing the right things, and we got owned, and this is the attack that we took. Scanned it, breached it with some web stuff, escalated privileges just because the web server was configured the way it was, which is now in the lost top 10, thank you, Wolfgang. Achieved persistence, did some internal recon, which was not noticed, and then decrypted all those files. So let's take a look at our threat model. Let's take a look at our graph here. We've got a detection control, good. We could catch the external recon. We've got a preventative control. All right, we've got a firewall, that's cool. We've got the WAF, well that failed. We've got nothing along the rest of the path. A little bit of detection, number 5, some internal recon that was ignored. And then number 8, which was, of course, those SSL keys. Effectively, we had no redundancy across those controls, right? 2 control failures is game over. And this is why I say defense in depth is dead. In my opinion, it's dead. It's very difficult to explain defense in depth. It's very difficult to measure defense in depth. It's very difficult to look at a graph or a whiteboard and go, yeah, it's defense in depth, that looks good to me. It's very difficult to do those things. Just because of the model and methodology we're using. And that puts us at risk. I'm waiting. You guys look all too happy. Oh, I almost caught that. Oh! Good thing I was looking down, didn't see who did that. So, I say defense in depth is dead a lot. They troll me about this. They're like, oh yeah, he says defense in depth. Tell us about redundancy again. You need redundancy, you need 2 days. But the thing is, you really do need to think about defense in depth in terms of the control path. And we got redundancy there. We can have a control failure. The WAF failed, great. Those caught the next step, right? If you've got the correct defense in depth, you're doing good. So let's revisit this with a little bit better controls in place. Arguably, we could go much, much deeper, but with only 20 minutes to go, that's what we're going to do. So this was our original scenario. We're going to move those GPG keys back. I think that's a good idea, obviously. We're going to do one of my favorite non-persistent controls ever, which is block anything in the perimeter from connecting to the internet. That's always a win, so that you get persistence. We got all these logs, though, that no one was talking to each other. So let's dump all those logs into a SIM. That's better. So now we got lots of logs. We still got the risk of people ignoring those logs. So let's add out arguably one of the most important controls in today's era, an instant response program, right? Someone watching that console, someone reacting, someone doing the right things. With very little cost, they probably already had SIM. This is a program, right? Maybe an FTE. We went to that, right? Now we can have multiple control failures along that path and still be in a pretty good spot. And with a couple honeypots just for lulls, we're doing all right. So the key point is if we know the path the real-world attacker takes, if we focus our security efforts on that path, if we implement the appropriate controls along that path, we're in a much better spot. We've had a responsive capability, we're doing pretty dang good. So with that, let's talk a little bit about pen tests and exercises. I mentioned at the top that one of the things that we're starting to be thinking about threat management was this pen test where the guy came in and did a heart poisoning scan and a Nessus scan and charged me $1 billion. So we're not going to much of this, right? I already said this, the idea of hacking is taking the tactics, techniques, and procedures that different threats are using today. And this is his full quote. And then, he said, and then using them against their organizations when they have a mature program to understand how our controls stand up when exercised by a sophisticated thinking adversary. I want to point out two things about this. One, we're not going to pen test an immature organization. If you don't know what you have, if you don't have some ideas of what controls you have, then assessing an attack path to that is pretty meaningless, right? There's a lot of paths in there, and then you've got this idea of running assessments all the time and filling gaps. I mean, that's a bad position to be in. The other thing is this concept of sophisticated thinking adversary. We need the pen tests to be appropriate for your industry, your business, your adversaries. The appropriate skill levels. I think when you combine those two, you're in a pretty good spot. If you think about exercises versus assessments, when I'm using these two terms, I just want to clarify what I mean. And again, this is Cobra Pepsi, you do what's right for you. But to me, an exercise is it's like a fire drill. You know, you go up, you pull the fire alarm, you make sure we got out of the building, make sure everyone knew what to do, make sure they got out in the right amount of time, and if they didn't meet their metric, they didn't meet their objective, maybe just some remediation training, whatever it may be. Whereas a pen test, you're walking around and setting things on fire. Arguably more fun, but both equally important. An exercise, when I'm doing a good exercise, I want to model a given attack, right? A real use case along a real path, and I want to test the specific controls along those paths. Whereas within doing a good assessment, I'm executing a real test, right? We're executing a real test on our organization and perhaps discovering new attack paths, hopefully discovering new attack paths. Let's talk a little bit about that. What makes for a good exercise? This comes from Derek Thomas. He does our exercises for the financial services firm. I kid you not, showed this picture. I was putting together a deck at one time, and my guy comes in and goes, "Hey, Wolf, about this, who is that?" That's Derek Thomas. Wow. Why is he in your deck? Is he going to check your stuff? I'll talk to you about the storage later. Good answer. Be ready. No, but he says, effective red team exercises focus on high probability events. And we spend a lot of time on this thing. What really is getting us? Let's test those. It goes back to the VCP talk I gave about asteroids. You don't necessarily worry about the asteroid. If you're really good at responding to fire, you're probably okay with the asteroids. So starting at an exercise level, building up that responsive muscle, and then elevating. We also want to test a specific stage in the attack path. So down here, we've got a graph, we pick a stage, we assume all prior controls have failed. This is exactly what was wrong with the pen test that went on our hypothetical organization. They tested in front and were stopped by one control and assumed everything was fine. But let's assume we've had multiple failures in our controls and start there. We also want to test both the controls and the response. Arguably, as organizations mature, the controls are not what stops the bad guys, it's the response, right? Controls are easy, people are hard, we all know that. So we want to test both, establishing metrics for responsive capabilities. Want it to be abuse case oriented, right? A real world abuse in our business, our sector, our internet. And we want it to be actionable. We tested you this way, we noticed you had this control defect, I have this control. Here's some guidance on how to do that. Great, let's do it, let's roll. So what makes for a good assessment? And how does that differ again from an exercise? An exercise testing a given control path. This comes from Josh Little. When he's not, he makes armor and sword fights and everything. He's a very scary guy to me. Yeah, this is very strange going in from operations to the pen test. But he tells me, look, Wolf, a pen test is a business assessment, not a technical assessment. If you're not intimately relating the findings to real-world risk, you're just wasting time. And again, I agree, that resonates so much with me, because that was the problem with the ARC quiz and saying, that's not real world, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is, can you insert trades into my trade flow? That's what matters to me. So when you think about effective assessments, they start with an objective that has an impact. If this happened, it would be really, really bad. Okay, let's see if we can make that happen. Right on. It relies on actual tactics and techniques that attackers would use. Right? It'd be really bad if you could, get to my service. Okay, can I have your badge card? Okay, here, sure, go assess. No. And it's finding new paths up our hill, right? New paths to our boulders, and then giving us a good story about how they did that, what it means, what type of controls you can put in place, and how you can prevent other people from following the same path. And you notice the duality here, right? A good pen test will then give you a framework that you can then do assessments on, or exercises on, right? And that's what takes a pen test from this guy coming up on our hill and grabbing a boulder. I know you guys want to come and get out of your system. Sheesh. This is like rapid fire now. Wow.
Redundant.
Oh, redundant, good. Good, redundancy. What's the redundancy over here? All right. Nice. Well done, sir. It's a hostile crowd. So this type of assessments is what takes it from this guy who just comes on your mountain and picks up something and throws it down and is meaningless to you, to this guy, right? The guy who's climbed your hill, climbed your mountain, found the most important system to you, jumped up and down on it, and said, look, here's why it matters to you, and here's what you can do to fix it. So some final thoughts, and I'll get you back to GrrCON. Threat modeling is a part of risk. It's a hard part of risk, because in the beginning it's very easy to see your assets, it's very hard to see your threats. We need to devise abuse cases that make sense for your organization, right? Things that you're actually going to see. And you need to build control redundancy along the path that abuse case would take, so we can stop the people. Once you got that, that's when you do testing, right? You run it. Hey guys, we're going to do an assessment. Be ready. Pull the fire drill. See how they respond. Better. Pull the fire alarm. See how they respond. Then tell you, oh, by the way, that's an assessment. But build that maturity level and keep doing continuous improvement. And keeping it real world. I was talking about this on Twitter as being threat-based risk management. Alice Cotton take me to task. And I think he's got a good point. He's like, well, risk is the intersection of threat, asset, control, and impact. And I agree with that. My point was simply, I think many people are still where I was a few years ago with it being boulder-based security, right? What can I see? What can I touch? What can I scan? What can I fix? We need to get out of boulder-based mentalities. Now, that can be threat-based, it can be asset-based, that can be control-based, but we need to iterate it out as we mature. And Alex pointed out, well, in which case, well, that's just unbalanced. There's no based, there's only risk, which is very zen. So I'll give you guys a blank slide in a moment to contemplate. The zen. Oh, that isn't even close. Oh, you're almost out of ammo too. Okay, So, Alex is absolutely right? We need to have balance. We need to have balance between our assets, our controls, and our threats. We need to be doing the right things in the right way. So I think that was way off. Things are getting worse. I like people taking shots as I say buzzwords or something. Quick, cloud, big data. All right, no. This brings us full circle in this talk series I began 5 years ago when building my security program. And in my mind, what makes an effective security program is the following items. It begins with the business, right? If you're in a truck company, you talk about the trucks. If you're in a financial company, you talk about the finances. It begins with the business and what matters to the business. From there, it talks about the impact, right? If these things happen, what is the financial impact? You know, what value are these assets driving when things are up? And what price are we incurring, fines are we incurring when things go down or are broken into? From there, we begin doing effective risk management with assets, focusing on the assets that matter the most, rolling them as high as possible, and securing them. We can get ahead of the game by doing SDLC as much as possible. And as the security program begins to mature, we get good information from our SIM, our IPS, our IDS, maybe we join an ISAC if the industry is correct. We can begin putting together abuse cases and threat paths. Here's how the bad guys are getting businesses like ours. And here's how the bad guys got us before. And here's what I'm seeing in the horizon from the vendors and their threat reports. And all together, once we mature and as we continue to grow up, that's not a reference to people throwing stuff at me. I'm saying as a security program or something. We can begin to do better pen testing, right? Or meaningful pen testing that actually matters to the organization. Pen testing, when I'm talking to my CEO, I can say, you know that thing that we're really afraid of? Well, Zombie Tango, well, I won't say that. But back up. Josh Little came in and he did that. And we need these controls. Maybe that's a spend, maybe that's not. But that's much better than saying, yeah, someone came in and did an SSQ. Here's the book. All right? And this, in my mind, is an effective security program. This is a balanced security program, and this is a beautiful approach. Because by modeling our assets, our threats, and by scanning our vulnerabilities and doing continuous improvement, we can continuously get better and better and catch up and hopefully excel, exceed, and accelerate beyond the attackers. I'll open up to questions. I got, what, 1 minute maybe?
Oh, you got
You got 8.
What did you do this?
Maybe the 15.
Oh, I got 8 minutes. Great. Cool. I got plenty of time for questions. Who's questions? Oh, there's questions. Yes, sir.
What's the most common point of failure in the actual assessment process?
I missed the beginning of what you said.
What is the most prevalent point of failure in the assessment process for companies?
What is the most prevalent failure in assessment of companies?
I mean, assessment process of practice or
An assessment process. So in other words, where a company is failing down, they're trying to assess threats.
yeah, where is the common?
The most common trigger point, I think, is A, a maturity level, right? So we hear scary stuff, so we start focusing on that before we know what we have and what matters. And B, plugging into the ISACs, the certs, and getting a threat intel. Now, I love our industry press, but people who read the press and panic versus people who are getting the hard data and react and respond appropriately. Anyone have anything else? Yes, sir.
It seems like the threat modeling approach relies on already having an understanding of where you're vulnerable. Where defense in depth exists because we can't know that, especially if the networks are too big. There's just too much going on. You just have to rely on the ball to do your job.
Right. So what you're saying is defense in depth relies on not knowing how the attacker's going to attack us, whereas threat modeling relies on knowing how the attacker's going to attack us.
Right, or at least making an assumption about how they would attack. And
That's
sometimes
absolutely correct.
It seems like attacks are coming from places where we don't assume.
Right, right. So there's a couple things about that. One is standard due diligence and due care. If you know the standard security controls that you need to put in place, this gets back to lifecycle management and vulnerability management. If you know those controls and you're putting them in place, you can have a decent level across your environment, right? It's the whole T thing, right? Wide and deep. And then you go deep on the attacks that you know are prevalent in the organization. And you go deep when you do the pen test, specific to the objectives that would hurt the most. Yes, sir.
How important do you feel it is within an overall threat model? Do you see adversary analysis and adversary modeling?
So the question is, how important is adversary analysis and adversary modeling to threat model? It is important insofar as knowing what the objectives are and what the threats are. I think one of the things that concerns me at the moment about adversary modeling is we're getting so many people, like for example with Anonymous, right? When Anonymous, does anyone know what the app was against financials a little while ago? AppUSA, thank you. FS Isaac had people, I'm not sure how many levels in, who were gathering information. And they were saying, oh, AppUSA is going on, they're just about to attack so-and-so. And we go, oh great. And I go, that's not me. And someone that so-and-so, so it's like, oh my God. And so up go the alarm something. Good news is we get that intel. The bad news, and this is something that many of us administrators are going to talk about, is at what point, when you've got so many people who are infiltrating this group and doing adversary analysis, are we more talking to ourselves? You know what I mean? And we begin to be divorced from the real threats because people begin to know, hey, if we're infiltrating and everything, things move around and whatnot. So I think adversary analysis is important from a minimum viable perspective to know who's likely to attack you and how they're likely to attack you. But I think when you get to the point where, in some organizations, bigger ones might do this, we're trying to infiltrate the groups and everything else, I think that's when you're like, wait, it was way out of bounds. Mr. Kickton.
So with respect to defense in depth, would you safely say that it's only a viable option when pigs fly?
Defense in depth is only a viable option when pigs fly. I like that. That's a good point. Anyone have anything else before we close up? Yes, sir. So again, in my mind, that's a minimum viable question. How much time should you spend, this question is, and correct me if I don't say this exactly right, how much time should you spend developing a honeypot to get value out of it? Is that a good way of putting it? Right, so let me give you a scenario. Let's assume company A, you work at, company B is just acquired. You're going, oh my God, how am I going to protect myself? Because now you're like linking out VPNs and everything, right? Good scenario, stand up a survey that no one talks to. So if you know company B has been affected, suddenly they're getting scans and everything, that's a great sign. I think that type of approach, minimal viable, stand it up when you think it will help is awesome. Would I dedicate certain resources to it or my team's resources to it? Probably not. But leveraging some of the resources we have and knowing we're in a position to win, very valuable. Okay, anyone have anything else? I think I'm out of time. All right, you guys have been great. Enjoy GrrCON. Thank you so much.